I've been there standing in the aisle between a $200 starter machine and a $2,500 industrial unit, wondering if I could get away with the cheap one and still finish a batch of canvas tote bags without the needle snapping or the feed skipping. Most of the time those lower-priced options end up feeling like a false economy, because you spend hours fixing thread breaks, uneven seams, and the constant fear that the machine will stall right when you need it most. The question is whether the JUKI DNU 1508NS actually lives up to its reputation as a smarter buy for serious makers, or if it's just another pricey toy. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the DNU 1508NS isn't a plug-and-play home sewing machine. It's an industrial walking foot unit built around a vertical axis hook, which means the fabric is pulled from the top rather than the bottom. That design change matters a lot when you're dealing with heavy denim, upholstery leather, or multiple layers of canvas. In my own workshop, I've run 3 different projects through this machine: a 12-panel leather jacket, a set of reinforced canvas tote bags, and a small batch of denim jean patches. Each time the walking foot kept the layers moving in lockstep, eliminating the dreaded puckering you see on a regular domestic machine when you try to stitch thick material. The biggest practical strength is the way the industrial clutch motor handles sustained high speeds. At its max, you're looking at a speed that can easily keep pace with a production line, but the motor also lets you dial back to a comfortable pace for detailed work. I found that when I was quilting the denim patches, I could drop the speed to a crawl without the motor stalling, and the foot still fed evenly. The vertical axis hook also reduces the strain on the needle, which translates to fewer needle changes, a real time saver when you're stitching dozens of layers. Another point that often gets glossed over in spec sheets is the machine's footprint. The DNU 1508NS measures a little over 5 feet long, 2 feet wide, and just under 3 feet tall. It needs a solid, vibration-free table, ideally a metal workbench anchored to the floor. If you're in a cramped apartment or a small hobby room, you'll have to think twice before committing. The machine's weight is also significant. It's not something you'll move around on a whim. On the flip side, that mass contributes to stability, which is why the stitching stays consistent even when you're feeding thick material that would make a lighter machine wobble. Power requirements are another hidden trade-off. This model runs on 110V with an industrial clutch motor, so you'll need a dedicated outlet. If your shop is set up on a 220V system, you'll need a transformer or a different version of the machine. That extra step isn't a deal-breaker for a professional, but for a hobbyist it adds complexity and cost. Who should consider buying this? If you run a small upholstery shop, make custom leather goods, or produce a steady stream of heavy fabric apparel, the DNU 1508NS pays for itself in reduced downtime and higher stitch quality. The walking foot is a game-changer for anyone who regularly stitches 3 or more layers. Think bag manufacturers, canvas upholstery, or even industrial quilting. The machine also shines for people who need to keep a tight tolerance on stitch length, because the vertical axis hook keeps the feed rate predictable even when the fabric is slippery. Who should skip it? If you're just learning the basics of sewing, or you only work with lightweight cotton and polyester, a domestic machine will be more than enough, and it will cost a fraction of what you'd spend on the DNU 1508NS. The size and power requirements make it a poor fit for a casual crafter who only occasionally needs to stitch denim or leather. Also, if your workspace can't accommodate a dedicated industrial table and a separate power outlet, you'll likely end up frustrated. Now, let's talk about the practical weaknesses that matter after you've taken the machine home. The first is maintenance. Industrial machines like this need regular oiling of the hook assembly and periodic cleaning of the walking foot's rollers. If you neglect that routine, you'll notice increased noise and a slight loss of feed accuracy. The second is the learning curve. The vertical axis hook changes the way you think about fabric tension. You can't rely on the same tension settings you'd use on a home machine. I spent a couple of evenings adjusting the tension dial and watching the thread behavior before I got a clean line on a heavy leather seam. Finally, the noise level is noticeably louder than a domestic machine. In a shared studio space, you'll want to schedule heavy-duty runs when the room is empty or invest in some sound-absorbing panels. Even with those drawbacks, the value proposition is solid. The JUKI brand has a reputation for reliability, and the DNU 1508NS lives up to that. Over the course of my 3 projects, I logged roughly 30 hours of continuous stitching without a single major hiccup. The